Good evening online as well as in the chamber to this planning meeting for September. Oh dear. First of all, apologies for absence, please.
None received, Chair.
I know that we have apologies from Pete Frewer. I don't know if there's anybody else. Is anybody else aware of any apologies? No? Or Gareth Barnard? We have those councillors in the room, but I believe there's a few councillors online, members of the planning committee.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. This is Councillor Zahruddin joining online.
Thank you.
And Councillor Ijaz joining online as well.
Thank you.
And Councillor Eggleston joining online as well.
Thank you very much. Good. Now, the minutes of the meeting for August are presented in today's agenda. Does anybody have any concerns about those minutes? Want to raise anything? No? Can I propose that those minutes are accepted as a true record? Seconded? Councillor Virgo? All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or affected interests in respect of any matter to be discussed at this meeting, considered at this meeting. Any member with a disclosable pecuniary interest in a matter should withdraw from the meeting when the matter is under consideration and should notify the Democratic Services Officer in attendance that they are withdrawing as they have such an interest. If the disclosable pecuniary interest is not entered into the register of members' interests, the monitoring officer must be notified in the interest of within 28 days. Thank you. Any members with any interests online or in the chamber? Nope, no interest. Oh, Caroline has actually just put up her. Councillor Eggleston, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Regarding the Skimpid Hill one, I am a patient of Forest Health and I used to work at Skimpid Hill. So I don't know if that counts as an interest.
Is that of concern? I think quite a lot of us have been patients at Skimpid Hill, actually, but actually working there is another matter. No, not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any urgent items of business?
No, not notified, Chair.
Thank you. Gosh, this is an enormous agenda. This is going to be messy, isn't it? Sorry. So the first item on our agenda for consideration is the land at Priory Fields, but that has been withdrawn for further consideration at a later time. So the next one is the land at the Yard, Chavey Down Road, Winkfield, otherwise known as Brickfields. I believe we have a couple of public speakers for that. Are those speakers here in the room? One, yeah, and is there another one? Yes, thank you. Yes, both speakers are here. So, I haven't got it to hand. We first of all need our objector, Mr. Andrew Young. Would you like to step up to the microphone? Oh, I beg your pardon. The officer's report first. I'm getting rather ahead of myself. We do need to know a bit about it first. Sorry. Please carry on, officer.
Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to present?
Yes, I'm
Oh, it's online.
I'm online.
Lovely.
I'm just trying to find my presentation, so just bear with me one moment.
Okay, good. Give me a moment to collect myself too.
I can't seem to bring up my presentation at the moment. So if I'll just make a start, and then I'll try and bring that up. Okay, so the application before you this evening is a Section 73 application, whereby the applicant is seeking to revise the site access arrangements.
Excuse me? Well, you can hear him for the moment. He hasn't got anything to present at the moment because it's not actually coming up.
We've never done this before, Chair, ever, actually. We've never done this that we've had a voice presenting.
Can I proceed? Is that okay?
Just a moment, please, Paul. Ah, there you are.
Yep.
Thank you. So
Okay, this evening, we've got an application known as a Section 73, which seeks to revise the site access arrangements, visitor parking, lighting and drainage infrastructure relating to a planning permission 20.00186 FUL. This involves revisions to the original legal agreement. The previous applicant for this particular site was Trimount Properties, who secured a number of planning permissions on this site, which is the wider site is known as Brickfields, between 2017 and 2020. These included the development which this particular application refers to for 7 dwellings under a permission in 2017, reference 17.00388 and 20.00186. These were funded by the applicant Oblex Capital Limited, who is the applicant of this particular application. When planning permission was secured for the 20.186, Trimount, the developer, retained control of the property known as Roseneath, which sits at the access point to the development site. And he retained Roseneath final arrangement with Wingfield Developments Limited. As part of this arrangement, a narrow sliver of land within the curtilage of Roseneath, the southern edge of the plot, was made available as part of the approved access arrangements. This has in part provided the opportunity to create an access arrangements, including a footway along the northern side of this access as part of the Wild Brickfields development, and therefore was also shown to be provided for consistency of the 20.186 application. What is important to note, the footway was not part of the original approval for the 7 dwellings. It has now transpired that the previous developer, Trimount, is unable to proceed with the development as the company is now in administration. And then the new applicant, Oblex Capital Limited, who provided the funding for this particular development, has now stepped in to complete any unfinished works to ensure compliance with the permission granted. A key point of note is that the access road without a footway under the original permission was not deemed to be unsafe. The revisions put forward are considered in this particular application relating to revised access arrangements, which creates a shared surfaced roads for cyclists, pedestrians and vehicles, as well as improved safety in respect of lighting and infrastructure and comprising drainage, which would serve the wider seven dwellings on the development site. Should also be aware that a civil dispute between Roseneath at the front of the site regarding the access and the strip of land has come to the fore. However, there's been no adjudication of the matter. As such, the current applicant has been able to still demonstrate necessary revisions to access the road are all within the land the applicant controls. The proposed drainage infrastructure located to the northwest is reliant upon land outside the applicant site, which is former Trimount land, the developer. This is now controlled by an appointed administrator for all of the Trimount land. This piece of land outside the application site is reliant for the off-site drainage infrastructure, and this will be secured by a Grampian condition, as the administrator of all the land is willing to support this. I'll attempt to see if I can bring up my presentation again.
Great.
I think something's working.
Great.
Trust that's viewable now.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the application site outlined in red. So this is the wider context. You can see the access comes off of Chavey Down Road. I think it's important to touch on the history of this. So as you can see on the left is the original permission, which comprised the 7 dwellings. This was submitted in 2017 and built on a former brownfield site. The access as part of this permission was improved and widened to a width of 4.8 metres. There was a further revision to this in 2019 under section 73. These are very minor amendments, including floor elevation and building material revisions, roof void accommodation, including dormers and roof lights. Then there was another revision, but most notably, this was a full application. This is the one that the current section 73 refers back to, is the 20.00186. Now, this particular application amended the site, the extent of the red line to the site, but also introduced a 1.2 metre wide footway along the northern section of the access road. So in terms of the relevant history this evening, which members need to take note of, we have the original permission as mentioned, the second revision, which was a full application, and the current application, which is a section 73. And this is the one that proposes revisions to the access visitor car parking, lighting and drainage infrastructure. So just as a quick recap, that's the 7 dwellings originally permitted, later boundary amendment, which also included the footway to the northern part of the access, and the current section 73 that seeks to revise those matters. So in broad terms, this is the general context and the wider number of applications being submitted on this particular site. So we have the application site outlined in red, 7 dwellings. So that was the original approval. To the left, we have 2 outside of that. Those were another permission for 2 detached dwellings. And further to the north is 5 additional dwellings that were also proposed, approved. However, that permission has since expired. So in very broad terms, the revisions we're looking at are the revised access arrangements. So that's number 1, and 2, the revised drainage arrangements. So you can see quite clearly the components relating to the SUDS drainage is off-site, so would impact on where the 5 detached houses have not been implemented, and as I say, that permission has expired. To the south is some reptile mitigation land, which is tied back to all of these sites, and that was secured through the Section 106. So there we have the original permission, the 7 dwellings. Most importantly, this is the element we've referred to. It's still for 7 dwellings. You can see the access way drawn there at 4.8 in terms of width all the way down. There was no highways objection to this original. This is again, the previous permission. This is the 20186, which brought the footpathway in to coincide with the 5 dwellings that I showed on the other slide, because they were deemed to be improvements and they were secured as part of that permission. So were also brought through to this application. However, it transpires, this is just an ordnance survey with the latest aerial data on it. It transpired the footway, as illustrated there, did slightly veer over the northern boundary line, but at the time it wasn't considered an issue because that property was also under the control of the developer. So this is a couple of overlays I've put together just to illustrate. So I've got here ordnance survey data, latest aerial data, the approved proposed access with a 1.2 metre wide footway, which was approved under the 20.00186, and also includes the applicant's land registry title plan. So this clearly shows that part of the access would appear to be over the neighbouring property's boundary. However, the important part to note here, the red line couldn't be tightened up on this particular application because it must mirror the sections, section 73 must mirror the application to which it seeks to amend. So the applicant in this case here is seeking to improve access arrangements. So what they've done is, as you can see, I've highlighted with a couple of visuals there just to help read the plan, and that's to implement a footway which is an extension of the existing footway that's part of the development site. So this is compensating for the loss of the northern section. So this pretty much takes you right down to halfway, or more than halfway down the access point. And then the remainder of it will just be shared access, shared surface. So here's a further couple of drawings. This showing the detail. I can move to the more detailed drawings if necessary. So these are showing the main access way with refuge points along the access, so pedestrians are not in the way of oncoming vehicles. They've got areas that they can stand in. So just touching on the drainage proposals, foul water drainage is already installed and it follows the alignment of the road out into the main sewer on Chavey Down Road as highlighted below. The first part of the access road up to the point of the new dwellings will also incorporate a new filter drain. This will be installed flat as per the drainage strategy drawing, and any surface water will drain to this via new road gullies, and I've highlighted and tracked those on that particular plan so it's easier to read. This plan also shows the off-site SUDS infrastructure that is reliant on the permission of the administrator of the adjacent land, and you can see the hatched green area is the flood attenuation feature, and then a pipeline would track north and then the flow would go out to the ditch on the northern boundary. So we've got some photos of this is a Google Street View of the access from Chavey Down Road at the moment. Members will be fully aware of the on-site particulars. Roseneath, the neighbour who is laying claim to part of the land, has erected a fence there, so there is a narrowing in the road, as can be seen in that image. This particular image, top left, is before the fence was erected in the roadside there. These are images of the development itself, the 7 dwellings. Towards the back of the site, as I say, where the off-site SUDS element is, there's some earth spoil on the adjacent site, but that is not in control of the applicant. Let's see if I can change my presentation here. Right, I can't see my other note. I seem to be locked into.
It's tricky. Well, hang on.
Yeah.
He's gone back.
Oh,
There you
sorry
are.
about that. It completely dropped out. Right. I shall just proceed with my presentation now. Sorry about that.
Can't be helped on those, can it?
No. So in terms of the revised access arrangements, which I've set out in a bit more detail, these are considered would result in an improvement and would enable the development to eventually be occupied once the works are implemented. The revised drainage strategy would also allow for the development to eventually be occupied once the works are implemented. The proposed works would not be considered to adversely impact upon the character or undermine the original approval. As I've already set out, the off-site drainage works would also enable the site to be adequately drained, and we have the land or control of that land. The administrator has confirmed in writing that they will facilitate these works in order that the development can be completed in a compliant manner and in accordance with their statutory function. Shall also touch on the lighting strategy. The lighting of the whole access road had always formed part of the original approved scheme in the form of bollard lighting. The current scheme now proposes to incorporate column lighting comprising 4 5-metre high columns along the first part of the access road to ensure the access is adequately lit in terms of highway safety. The remainder of the access will still comprise bollard lighting as originally approved. And this is all contained within the applicant's supporting lighting strategy. And it concludes that through the application of this revised lighting strategy, it's been considered all relative sensitive receptors, and that primarily includes neighbouring properties. It concludes that the scheme would not result in any adverse obtrusive light impacts, which is evidence at Appendix 1 and 2 of their report. This has also been reviewed and supported by the Council's Environmental Health Officer. The lighting strategy has also been assessed by the Council's Biodiversity Officer and has concluded that the revised scheme would not have a greater impact on nocturnal wildlife. The street lighting has also been reviewed by the Council Senior Engineer Highway and Electrical and found to be acceptable. In terms of other matters, SPA and SIL matters, the proposal results in 7 new dwellings, therefore it's considered still SIL liable, but it also falls within 5 kilometres of Thames Basin Heath SPA and is therefore liable to financial contribution for SPA mitigation for the 7 dwellings. It's worthy to note this was secured under the original legal document. However, the monies remain outstanding, so it stands the houses cannot be occupied until this is settled. So overall, as set out in the main report and as amended by the supplementary report, it's not considered there are any material planning considerations that would now warrant withholding permission for this Section 73 application before the committee this evening. Consider it's been demonstrated through the latest technical submissions that a safe and usable access is deliverable, and that includes the proposed drainage strategy for the wider site. It is considered by the inclusion, either by condition or within the deed of variation to the original legal agreement, there are sufficient safeguards to ensure the key elements relating to the delivery of a safe access to serve the 7 dwellings originally approved and built with other associated infrastructure such as the lighting, drainage can be implemented to allow for the 7 dwellings to be occupied. The application is therefore recommended for conditional approval as set out in the report, subject to satisfactory completion of a deed of variation to the original 106 agreement. This deed of variation will vary the original agreement by incorporating 1, reptile mitigation measures. For example, this requiring the incorporation of the reptile mitigation area, a management company to secure the ongoing management and maintenance of the reptile mitigation area. 2, to secure obligations regarding landscaping. 3, to secure the implementation and management and maintenance of the access with the associated lighting and drainage. 4, to update the highways obligations to reflect the current status of the development. And 5, to also secure the outstanding SPA financial contribution upon completion of the deed of variation to the original agreement. Finally, I'll draw members' attention to the amended recommendation, in particular, the alternative recommendation as set out in the supplementary report. This does now impose a time frame if the application is supported this evening, as no decision can be issued until the applicant completes this deed of variation, and the date set for this would be the 31st of December 2024. Therefore, failure to complete the agreement by this date could still result in the application being refused, as per the reasons set out in the supplementary report. Thank you, Chairman. That completes my presentation on this application.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for our objector to speak, please. Thank you. If you'd like to come up to the microphone on the thank you. It's Mr. Andrew Young. Thank you. You will have 3 minutes.
Right, well, may it please you, I'm going to start speaking now. 3 minutes is not long enough for me to actually list all of the material difficulties with this, so I'm going to have to focus on a few narrow points.
I'm sorry that it is the rules that we
Yes,
have
I
to
appreciate
follow.
maybe the rule.
Okay, thank you. So would you like to start now?
I will start now. There are 2 reasons why this decision should be deferred. The first one is that there is an irregularity over the SIL payment. It is simply not true that no payment has been received. I've investigated it and I have seen the bank statement that has paid a considerable sum of money over. So a question arises, where's the money gone? Has this a mistake? It needs looking at before this matter should be considered any further. I better not say any more than that. I've not got the time. The next issue is the contaminated earth mound. This is a serious issue. I have chapter and verse of the government guidance on the way that this should be approached with regard to planning. With the greatest of respect to the planners, it has not been looked at all. This is a contaminated earth mound. It is estimated that it will take 1,000 heavy goods trucks to remove these materials that were brought onto the site. It is contaminated, and witnesses who live in the road will state what they saw going in. There has been no attempt to actually investigate or take soil samples or anything else. That is another reason why the decision should be deferred. It isn't completely accurate to say that the earth mounting area is completely outside of the control of the applicant. The reality is that the entire area is under the control of an administrator appointed by the court. He has the ultimate control over the entire area, and the earth mountain remains on that land, and he has a duty under the Environmental Protection Act to do something about it. That has been sitting there for a long time. Water is hitting it. It's running into the water course. The earth is not protected. It's not plastic covered. It doesn't have any covering over it. There are no plans or conditions as to how it should be removed. How are the 1,000 trucks going to bring it out through Brickfields Lane? Moving on to the lane itself, the improvement that we're told will happen will at one point be reducing the access, reducing it to a mere 3.7 metres. In my respectful submission, 3.7 metres is not an improvement. Going back to the original planning, and I would say this, that the residents and community all support the development. They like the look of it. They just want it doing properly. The original planning envisaged houses with 2 floors. I think eventually they were increased to 3 floors. Final point. It's completely wrong to say that the applicant has control over all of the land. That's simply untrue because there's a fence there, and there's a court case going on. And until that is resolved, I say possession is 9/10 of the law, and Roseneath have possession at this time. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. Does anyone have questions for the objector, please? I'm so sorry.
Not at all. My apologies for walking away. I wasn't
It's okay. Yeah, I'd forgotten to. Right.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. You raised some quite interesting points, and I'm sure members will have some questions of the officers in relation to some of those shortly. I'm just interested, the specific elements that the committee are considering tonight are the changes to the previous application, which form part of the Section 73, which is limited to within the red line boundary. Are there any elements of what's actually proposed in terms of those changes to the original application that you're specifically concerned with or objecting to?
Well, yes, and I didn't cover them because of the problem on time. And just to give you an idea, I've got this many listed on several pieces of paper, and I'm conscious that I'm somewhat limited. The main point is one of safety. There was a similar scheme that was sought in Mushroom Castle. I don't know how many of you will be familiar with Mushroom Castle Road, which is about 100 metres from the same development. Very similar situation. And that was rejected on the basis of safety. It also should be noted that the parish council, many of the parish councils are very familiar with the area, it having 2 schools close by, it having 2 school playgrounds close by, it having 2 community halls within 100 metres of either side of Brickfields Lane, they certainly form the view that that this application ought to be refused on the basis of safety. So I would say safety is perhaps the main point. We simply don't like the idea of a shared access. Furthermore, with respect to the audit that was carried out regarding traffic, quite frankly, that is nonsense. What they did is they turned up between 1 and 2 o'clock on a particular day in July to count cars going in. Now, we all know, as a matter of common sense, that we have a rush hour. I had a look at the government guidance which is set out. They actually cited an example from Reading, and I calculated it based on the government guidance published to your authority. And I've worked out that during peak hours, the traffic crossing the 3.7 metre gap will exceed 100 vehicles per hour. And on that basis, it falls outside of the recommended safety requirements. So I fear there's just been a complete mistake on that, based on an examination of traffic taken at a completely poor time. And of course, the point is that the houses currently are not occupied. These are large houses.
I'm sorry, I failed again. These are supposed to be questions of clarification.
Oh, forgive me. I thought I was
briefly,
answering the question. But
yeah. Shall we have another? Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, please.
Thank you, sir. The contamination, how dangerous is it, and would it affect any of the nearby schools?
Well, do you remember Aberfan?
Say again, sorry?
Remember Aberfan?
I do.
That's when Spoil
Yes,
was
I do.
contaminated by rain. It slid over, 116 children died, and it also hit a series of houses. Now, I'm not suggesting that we've got an Aberfan immediately around the corner. However, It is dangerous. My inquiries of the Environment Protection Agency have indicated that it ought to be properly covered with plastic or some other form. It could move. It's also starting to kill trees because it's across tree roots. This is a serious issue, and with respect to the authority, nobody has looked at it.
Right.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. Much appreciated.
Councillor Virgo, please.
Thank you, Chair, very much. Could I just ask why you put the fence up, please?
Yes, because that set out the boundary of Rosenheath, and the difficulty is this, that if one doesn't assert one's boundary, the risk is that it's lost.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just have a
Councillor
further
Virgo,
question,
yeah.
please, Chair. Did you see, you referred to the mound, did you see other lorries coming from other sites to deposit material on the mound?
I didn't see anything. However, I've made inquiries of people who live in the road, and the occupant of Tree Lights was very clear that he actually spoke to a number of the drivers. In fact, some of the drivers actually took some of the spoil out and leaned it against his fence. It isn't just soil and so forth. It's everything from radiators, all sorts of waste off other things. And I'm also told that the road itself developed something of a sinkhole, and some of the waste has actually been put into Brickfields Lane itself.
Thank you. That's enough. It's not part of our considerations because it's not part of the
But thank you.
application site. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Young? No?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about all the muddle. Let's manage to give more information. Now we have, in response, Mr. Patrick Barry, please. Could you... okay. Sorry?
Thank you and good evening, members.
Oh, half tick. I better make the rules clear. It's 3 minutes, and I'll give you a warning at 20 seconds, and you can carry on at that point. But at 3 minutes, I will stop
Thank you.
Thank you. Ready?
Thank you and good evening, members. I would like to start by acknowledging that the officer's report provides a detailed and balanced assessment of the proposal. Importantly, from the applicant's perspective, it provides the context to the proposal before you this evening. As members will probably be aware, this development site has been substantially complete since early 2022, yet the existing homes remain vacant. The officer's report explains why this is the case. The development company has gone into administration, and this is why the applicant, who provided funding for the development, has brought forward this application. It also highlights that the administrator, who is in attendance this evening, is supportive of the application and has confirmed that the drainage proposals will be facilitated in accordance with their statutory function. The officer's report details the various significant and unforeseen technical and non-compliance issues that have come to light in assessing the previous developer's work. These issues have prolonged the planning process, but this has been both necessary and worthwhile to ensure that no issues are left unresolved should planning permission be granted. Principally, the application seeks to vary the access and drainage arrangements. While the application varies a number of planning conditions, these variations relate to the principal access and drainage matters or have been made necessary to remedy the technical and non-compliance issues that have emerged through the process. Therefore, the only substantive and material planning issues that remain for consideration are the access and drainage proposals for the development. The access proposals are different from those previously approved, but they are suitable and safe for the proposed development. They have been subject to an independent road safety audit confirming their acceptability, and your officers raised no objections. The drainage proposals are needed as we could not locate any of the previously approved drainage infrastructure. The shared assumption between the applicant and the officers is this was not installed. The drainage officer raises no objection, and approval has been obtained from Thames Water for the necessary access road drainage. The applicant has agreed to officers' requests for various additional planning conditions and updates to the legal agreement to ensure that 1. All outstanding matters are resolved, the access and drainage proposals have full council oversight and are implemented properly, and suitable management and maintenance measures are in place for the lifetime of the development. In its currently unfinished state, with a construction site access, with no known surface drainage infrastructure, the site is clearly a concern to the neighbouring residents and the council. The applicant is obviously keen to secure planning permission here in order that the development can be completed properly and sold, so that is their lending can be recovered. However, planning permission is also the solution to the existing concerns. In conclusion, we feel the proposal is carefully considered and comprehensively addresses all of the relevant issues on site. With this in mind, we hope members will support their officer's recommendation to approve. Thank you for your time.
Oh, gosh, that was very good timing. Now, members, do you have any questions of clarification, please? Oh, I forgot to say that we've got visiting members, Councillor Hayes and Councillor Gore, just for the purposes of this application, I think. Councillor Hayes.
Thanks, Mayor. You must excuse my moving along. It's just a clarification. You keep saying the word planning permission. This is a 73, so it's a variation. Do you think with the variation that you are still encroaching on land that is not in your ownership to be able to attain even this application variation?
Thank you. As the officer highlighted in the presentation, it's a requirement of a Section 73 application to mirror the original red line. The distinction here is that the access proposals, they don't extend to the red line. They're set away from the red line, but all of the works required to deliver the proposed access are in the control of the applicant. They're not. They're in the ownership of Trimount, who is the company's in administration. But for a planning application, you don't have to own the land to apply for planning permission. You just need to have sufficient control of the land and serve the correct notices, which we have done. So procedurally, we've done everything we need to do, and there is the control required to deliver the proposed access arrangements.
Thank you. Councillor Verga.
Thanks very much, Chair. Good evening. Is it true that you've served a notice on Sandra Tizard's land, as it is their land, giving notice that you want to achieve the 73? Is it true?
We serve notice on the property of Roseneath because, as I said, the red line extends beyond the extent of the works we're proposing. So procedurally, we have to serve notice on everything within the red line. But we don't require that land to deliver the proposed access.
Thank you, Chair. That's in dispute, but thank you.
Thank you. Do remember that any questions should be on accuracy of the report you've just heard. But I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Barry. So, questions from members to the officer, please. Is the officer there? Can we? Oh,
yes.
Good. There he
yes,
is.
I'm
Thank
here.
You. Oh, good. Members, questions to the officers, please. Officer. Councillor Collins.
I know we're not supposed to be considering the mound, but it seems to me that we are putting a drainage off-site cellular storage next to the mound, and we are digging a drainage channel north towards an existing ditch to drain the land. Is there any chance that the contamination from the mound will enter the storage facility and drain north into the ditch, which I assume eventually ends up in a stream and then a waterway, and could pollute that waterway more than it may be at the moment?
I shall try and answer that question through you, Chair. My limited understanding of the drainage setup is that it is a piped route to the ditch. So the trench would be dug and the pipe put in, and the flood attenuation or crates would be sealed, so the water is piped into those. So my limited knowledge, I don't know if I'm correct, I don't believe, if it's only a ledge that's contaminated, I don't think there would be any cross-contamination in my view.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, could I add something to that, please?
Thank you.
As the case officer says, I don't think there's evidence at this stage as to whether or not the mound is contaminated, but I would draw members' attention to condition 25 on the agenda, which sets out the testing that would be required of the soil mound prior to the commencement of off-site drainage works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Councillor Gore, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officer please explain why there's a variation between their account of the width of the access road and the objector's account of the width of the access road? I believe the figure was 4.8 and the objector said 3.7. I'm not clear as to why there should be a differential.
Thank you. Officer?
Andy Wells, Highways, through you, Chair.
Yeah.
The width of the access road narrows in part through a narrowing of 3.7 metre wide carriageway, adjacent to which there is a proposed pedestrian refuge. So the shared surface part of the development, access road, in which vehicles and pedestrians share the full width of the space, is for approximately 28 metres from the connection with Chavey Down Road. There is then approximately 15.5 metres narrowing to 3.7 metres with an adjacent pedestrian refuge. And then the carriageway widens again to 4.8, and adjacent to that there is a pedestrian refuge widening to a full footway, which was shown in yellow on Paul's presentation earlier. So that there isn't a discrepancy. The access road is a mixture of a full shared surface where all users use the same space, and that is signed at each end, and a narrowing of the carriageway where vehicles will go one way or t'other, won't have to wait, and an adjacent pedestrian refuge, and then a 4.8 metre wide carriageway with adjacent refuge and footway beyond. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Thank you. Councillor Gore.
Yes, could I just ask that again? I just might have missed the first bit. So from the turning of Chavey Down Road into the access road, what is the width?
The width at the point of connection with Chavey Down Road is 4.8 metres of carriageway plus narrow adjacent verges.
Thank you.
Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just take that point up that Councillor Gore started? Would you agree that in order to get the splay, as Councillor Gore was saying, from Brickfields onto Chavey Down Road, that you would go on disputed land at the moment? That land cannot be delivered unless you use some of the land belonging to Roseley.
Through you, Chair. No, I don't believe that to be the case. The width of the footway and small slither of additional highway land which forms the crossover to Roseneath and the Brickfields access road is sufficient to provide the visibility splay for vehicles onto Chavey Down Road without encroaching on the land.
Thank you.
I've got several others, actually. I'm sorry, Chair, if you could bear with me. 1.5 talks about the fact that this was acceptable and it's never been raised before about the width. That isn't true, is it? Because when this application came in, Highways indeed did object to this. It may have been a different application, but it was in fact the truth. But this report doesn't really say that.
Chair, can I respond there? if you're referring to a previous application, that's not relevant here. You need to be referring to the application before you.
I understand that, Chair, but I think members should know the history of things, because we're always told in this planning committee, and I've been here for many years, the history is always worth considering. But I wanted to make that point, but I'll make it in the summing up. Can I go to 3.2, because there seems to be confusion. It clearly says in the report that the mitigation, that the payments were not paid. I am told they were paid. I don't quite understand that. Could someone put some meat on the bone of this, please?
Again, Chair, through you, legal advisor for the council, I've had confirmation from the SIL compliance officer that no payments have been made. There has been no evidence produced to the contrary to this committee.
Chair, I'm extremely concerned about this point, and I have to raise it in this room. I have seen evidence that payment has been made.
Councillor, I think that the
No, I think this is a really important point, and I'm sorry.
It may be, but they do have time to have a discussion and regularise.
But we have to decide on this application tonight, Chair.
Yes,
and we
but
have to
they
find
have-
out whether
they
that
have-
is true or false.
I think it's 3 months they
Can
have
I come in?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. If I can expand on my response, the clarification or of that dispute as to whether any monies have been paid or not is not relevant. There's no, that's not one of your planning considerations. It's not a material planning consideration as to whether those monies have been paid or not.
Chair, if it isn't relevant to us sitting in this room, why is it on the report?
Because that is a matter that's already been dealt with. It's not.
But it hasn't been dealt with respect.
It has, because it's required as part of the Section 106 agreement. So in order for them to actually occupy those properties, that cannot be done until those monies have been paid.
Yes, but I'm sorry, Chair, I must push this point.
But
if members are looking at something on a report that says no payment has been made, and yet payment has been made and proof is given, it gives the impression that any kind of opposition to this doesn't hold validity. And so I must raise this because this is a very important point to this committee.
I have not seen any proof of payment.
Well,
I don't know whether...
I think proof has been sent. If it hasn't been sent, it can be sent. And I'd like this to be taken up, please, at some point.
I haven't seen any proof, and
then proof, I'm sure, will be shown to you.
And it's not a planning consideration for
But
this
it's on
committee
the
on this
report,
application.
Chair. It's on the report. I must make this point because if it's on a report, members consider it when looking at this application. Otherwise, don't put it on the report.
I accept that, but they do have time to make all those arrangements. Otherwise, it will be brought back to us, I'm sure.
Okay, let me just go on then, please. There is also a point about landscape, and there's an objection from the landscape officer. Can I have some understanding as to what that is, please?
Do we have an officer, Paul?
I can deal with that one, Chair. The landscape officer made an objection only over the apparent species that are planted on the site. I think some of them may be non-native, so there was an objection raised on that ground.
Okay, it doesn't say that in the report, obviously. Can I just move to a point that was made about the mound? I know you don't want to talk about this, but I'd like to ask a question, please, because it's relevant. The drainage goes, I think we all accept this, through the blue line from, as the Deputy Chair was talking about, from the tank to an outlet further beyond the site. That's what's the mitigation to the land drainage situation on the 73 application. I don't quite understand then why this isn't part of the construction site if you are going to dig up a considerable amount of land because it is a mound, and therefore it's not considered part of construction because it has to be part of the construction. Otherwise you can't do it. That's the question, please.
Somebody give us clarification?
Sorry, Councillor Virgo, could I just clarify what your question is?
Yeah,
is
of
it
course.
that,
I waffled
yes.
a bit, actually.
No,
It's
no, no.
probably why.
Are you seeking to clarify why the mound isn't being
I'm
removed
asking-
if the drainage works are going through the same piece of land?
I'm trying to ask why it's not considered part of the construction site, because it has to be part of the construction site, because if you've got to dig up a mound to put in, unless it's not going to go in 2 inches, is it? It's going to go in, I don't know what the regulations here are for land drainage, but it's got to go in quite considerable. So you've got to get an excavator to go in there and dig up part of the mound to lay the pipes in order to achieve the outlet of water. My point is, if that is absolutely true, and it seems to be from the report, then surely that's got to be part of construction.
Through you, Chair. I think Paul, as the case officer, might like to comment further, but my understanding is twofold. One is that it's outside the application site, and so when you talk about the construction site, we're looking at specifically at the application site. And my understanding from previous conversations with the case officer is that the impact on putting in the off-site drainage works on the mound is very minimal. But Paul, I don't know if you can provide any further clarification on that point.
I totally agree. I think the impact on the mound is extremely minimal. It's literally right at the toe of the mound, and it might be once they get on site, it may probably avoid the mound digging or excavating any amount of that. In terms of the depth, I'm not sure on the depth of the pipe. I'd have to go back to the drawing and have a look to see if that clarifies it.
Chair, through you, if I may ask Paul, that's not the point of my question, really. My question is, if you are going to dig in an area across land, surely that has got to be part of permission, because it's part of the 73. Therefore, it's part of the construction. Whether you say it's in the blue line or not is rather irrelevant, because you've got to use the blue line to achieve the 73.
Can I just point out that in many other applications, the drainage goes beyond the site and has to be considered, but it's not owned, that those areas are not owned by the applicant for that.
Well, I'm just asking, Chair, if that is right in planning law,
Yeah.
that if you do that, you're allowed to do that, and that is, you don't have to have permission to do that.
Well, they do have permission.
Well, if you have to have permission, I go back to the point I'm making, it's part of the construction. Therefore, it is linked to the original site. Otherwise, you can't do it.
Through you, Chair. I mean, just to confirm that these would be considered off-site drainage works, and the point that you've made is correct, is that in a lot of instances, drainage works do have to take place beyond the extent of the application site.
Okay, and just to press this, you don't need permission for that.
Through you, Chair. Yes, you certainly do require permission, and as has been confirmed, permission
Kind of 23 here,
is
isn't
being
it?
afforded.
Okay, that's fine. I'll make that point in the summing up. Could I just understand, because I didn't understand from Paul, really, the deed of variation. What does that actually mean, please, to us laymen in the room?
Legal. Chair, through you. What the deed of variation does is you had a Section 106 agreement with the original permission, and what the deed of variation is, when you have a Section 73 application, we update the original Section 106 agreement so that it accords with the Section 73 permission. So it's basically making sure that all the obligations are carried forward, and any additional obligations that are required are contained in the deed of variation.
Right, so just to understand this, if there's any changes that haven't been approved, then obviously this is null and void. Is that the idea of the variation?
I'm sorry, I didn't know
I don't understand why we're doing a deed of variation when this is a 73 application.
we have deed of variations on Section 73s all the time.
As we do on every application, do we?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
fine.
more, quite common.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Virgo, could you switch off your...
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I believe I'm correct in understanding, but I hope the officer will put me right if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that the main reason for the change to the access is that there's a portion of land that was required in the extant permission to deliver the extant permission that they no longer have control of. And I think that was the yellow area that the officer was showing. I'm just wondering if we could get advice on what are the implications for the status of that permission if the applicant is not actually able to deliver what they currently have permitted?
A Section 73 is a new permission, so it's up to the applicant whether they implement the previous permission or the Section 73, but Section 73 is considered to be a new planning permission.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, a supplementary on that. My question was not so much in regards to the Section 73, but does that have any implications on the status of the extant permission? You know, because if the extant permission were void, then obviously you couldn't have a 73 to it.
No, it doesn't become void. It still exists and it has been implemented. So the previous two permissions, I understand to have been implemented already, have they? Yes, yeah. So the Section 73 will purely be in relation to the changes, but it is a Section 73 in law is considered to be a new planning permission.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, another?
If I may ask a separate question, Chair. I'm just slightly unclear. The agenda supplement introduced an alternative recommendation, and I wasn't quite clear if there was one or the other recommendation, or if this is a sort of an addendum to the...
It's not an alternative recommendation. I'm sorry I didn't spot that wording if that's what it says. What happens whenever we have a recommendation for approval, we also, and a Section 106 agreement is involved, we usually have a paragraph saying that if the Section 106 is not completed by a certain date, then the application would be refused for these reasons, but that date can be extended with the approval of the Assistant Director for Planning. So it's not an alternative motion.
Thank you. So it's part of the recommendation that we will vote on shortly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll need an amendment to that supplementary report, please. Yeah. Other questions? Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Chair. The objector alluded to the fact that the assessment of the traffic movement took place at a time when traffic was likely to be infrequent. Does that have an impact on your assessment?
Through you, Chair, Andy Wells, Highways. The objector referred to the timing of an event which was part of a road safety audit. It was not an event which was there to count vehicles. The two things are very separate. And the road safety audit is there to assess the safety of the scheme before it and to present any potential issues for the designer to address. And in this instance, the road safety audit identified some issues relating to the pedestrian refuges and the curbing between the refuges and the carriageway, and the recommendation by the safety auditor was to provide contrasting coloured surfaces for those areas. And the designer in this instance has agreed with those safety audit recommendations, and colour contrasted surfaces for those areas have been provided.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Hello, sorry, Mackenzie Boyle here. As an adjunct to that, what was the weight of the traffic? So you've got...
As responded to in the previous question, the road safety audit is not there to assess the type or volume of traffic. It is there to assess the safety of the presented highway scheme.
May I please?
Yes, please.
Surely the safety is not for the audit, but for the residents. I mean, we would like to see, I would assume, that the higher weight, would that prove more of a risk?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Councillor.
Okay,
Apologies.
it's a light flow of traffic, okay, which satisfies the audit. It might not satisfy the residents if the weight of the traffic is more and gives them more of a risk.
Okay, so the safety auditor will take into account the typical traffic for the proposed development in doing their assessment. They don't have to be there on site to observe that. The access road serves circa 14 dwellings, including the secondary access to Trillites. We, the Highway Authority, have undertaken a comparison using the TRIX database, which contains a number of residential sites across the country in various different locations, and similar locations have been selected. And that assesses that during the morning peak hour, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., the expectation is 6 vehicles through the hour, so approximately 1 vehicle every 10 minutes. The evening peak hour, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., approximately 9 vehicles through the hour, so a vehicle approximately every 6.5 minutes. And through the day, so 12 hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., approximately 68 vehicles. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
It certainly does.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
I'd just like to ask, there is a property on the road called Orchard House, and the implication is that it is not purely a dwelling. Could somebody tell me what that is and whether that has been taken into consideration?
I think this is a traffic one, so
I'm happy to pick it up from a traffic movement point of view. As far as the Highway Authority is concerned, the planning status of that building is a residential dwelling, and that is how it is considered in the assessment.
do we need any further clarification, Assistant Director?
Through you, Chair, I think that wasn't an allegation that I was aware of, that it wasn't being in use for purely residential purposes, so that's something certainly we can investigate.
Thank you, that's very useful. Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Chair. Back to the highway question. Can I just check that it has been taken into consideration that Chavey Down Road is a very busy road with children walking to school and walking back from school, and that side of the road is the only access to the crossing point to the school. You mentioned that this had possibly been done virtually because there was no need to attend site. So I just want to be absolutely sure that residents' children will be safe. Thank you.
Through you, Chair,
Yeah.
the Highway Authority, myself, has visited the site on numerous occasions since the application came in, and equally with the previous applications back in 2020 through 2022. So I have been out on site many, many times. And the access visibility display onto Chavey Down Road is more than would normally be required for the Manual for Streets requirements, and the access road itself serves fewer than our highway design guide allows for on a shared surface. So I don't consider there to be any additional issues, especially considering that this site, in terms of the number of dwellings that it serves, has already been permitted for that volume of traffic in this location.
Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
Could I go back, Chair, to the highway, the same problem as Councillor Gore was saying? I am confused, to be honest, because we were in this room about a month ago considering a application in Mushroom Castle, 42 houses. And
excuse me, but is this about a change? Because that's what we're considering.
It's a question.
Is it about the section 73, or is it about the original application?
No, this is a question regarding 73, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And we considered at that point, at that meeting, that Mushroom Castle, which is similar to this road actually, And it does have parking, it does have pullings for people, because we talked about it on a previous application. That was refused on the basis that it was, I can read you the actual thing, but it was unacceptable impact on highway safety in the eyes of the community. Now, when we turn then to, let me just finish this question, please, because I really think this is unfair, Chair. If you then turn to Brickfields, it's exactly the same. There's no difference. So the question is, there seems to be some difference of applying judgment to one road than we are applying judgment to Brickfields.
Thank you. I think this is for the Assistant Director.
Through you, Chair, just as a matter of clarification, obviously the previous application at Mushroom Castle isn't before you this evening. However, it was considered last month and it wasn't refused. The application before the committee last month was for a variation to the terms of the legal agreement following a previous resolution for approval of that application. And that resolution for approval was amended and endorsed.
Just a clarification on that, if I may, Madam Chair. What happened is that the point of the variation is that it was refused to the developer to use it as an access for pedestrians and cyclists. That's what was before us in that meeting. Now, my question is, it seems very strange when we look at this before us on the 73 that this is perfectly acceptable.
Sorry, through you, Chair. The reason the access wasn't available was on grounds that the ownership wasn't able to deliver it. So the Highways Authority at that time indicated that it wasn't wide enough to provide it to adoptable standards, and so it's a different circumstance from this one currently.
But if I may say so, they're both unadopted.
Through you, Chair, if I may add clarification as the officer who dealt with both applications. The differences in this are multiple. The first being the Mushroom Castle application, which was recommended for approval at the last committee, had the Mushroom Castle itself, the road, was not within the red line application boundary, and therefore the applicant of that scheme could not deliver changes to that road. This site, the application boundary includes the entirety of the access that is proposed, and the changes to that road to improve pedestrian safety are in front of us, and that includes, for example, street lighting, which was one of the reasons that the Highway Authority had concerns about the Mushroom Castle proposals. So they are different. You must consider each application on its merits, and this application has Highways recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Any further questions? Anybody online have a question? No? I think
No, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Councillor Ijaz, please.
I said no, Chair. Thank you. I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. I think that, Councillor Gore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It just came to my mind that the Winkfield Neighbourhood Plan has a policy on dark skies, and whereas low lighting, may have been permissible, the sudden change to a different style, more aggressive style of lighting, has the neighbourhood plan been taken into consideration when considering this aspect?
I do believe there's
yes,
special lighting for this. Officer Corbett?
Yes, I can confirm, Chair, that policy W10 dark skies, the Winkfield Parish policy was taken into account when looking at this application. This is LED lighting, which is more directional, so you don't get as much light spill, so it's very directional.
Do you want to add something, Assistant Director?
No, I think that covers it. Thanks, Chair. Other than the fact that that is referred to in paragraph 9.50 of the report.
Thank you very much. think that's everything. So we've covered everything and more in some depth, I believe. So time to for me to recommend approval, conditioned approval, which is on, page 131 of the agenda pack, and the amendment to the recommendation, page 3 of the supplementary papers, and then the recommendation, page 3 of the supplementary papers, if it should be
called an alternative.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of clarification, Chair, could I just confirm that this, that on the supplementary report, it's not an alternative recommendation?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if it should fall, then that's what we do. Can I have a second? Councillor.
I'll second Councillor Collins.
Thank you. So we speak once on this. Who would like to start? Councillor Virgo.
Depends how I will. Gosh, what do you say over this? This has been with this council, for 2-3 years, in debate, changes, whatever. There are so many things, members, which are not clear. That's why we spent, an hour and a half on this, actually. I'd just go through them, actually. The mound, I'm sorry to bring this up. I know it's been told that it's not our problem, but it is the problem of the residents because they are literally yards in front of it. And I visited one of the residents and he was very concerned about what was going on. And he said, I'd like it removed. Now, the mound has been caused by the administrators, the developers, the administrators. And as the speaker said, it probably, and I don't know because we haven't had a report from the officers who visited it probably contains toxic waste. So as you can imagine, anybody living near that, and if you were living near that, you would be more than concerned. So that's the first thing. I still don't understand what we're doing with it. I understand it's for enforcement, but there's no further news on how that's going to be achieved. Because it's been a point of talk for months. Both myself and Councillor Gore have raised it. That's the first point. The utilities for the electric, water and communication, and this isn't disputed actually, is in private land. It's in the land of Roseley. It is not in the land that is owned by in the road or. In other words, if people want to get at it, they have to ask permission in private land. That seems to me ludicrous. The lighting originally was low-level lighting. I'm not a fan of this council's lighting, I have to say, not the what seemed to be scaffolding poles to put up. And so low-level lighting was there for a reason, and I would like that to be considered because, once again, we just light up, as Councillor Gore says, everything around. And actually, to be honest, although LEDs are directional, they give off a fair old powerful light. Now, the dispute with the fence seems quite pertinent to this committee because the delivery of the highway, and I slightly disagree with the Highways Department, the delivery of the highway and also the splay which goes out will be on private land. And the fact is that is at the moment in litigation and will go before the courts. We know that the problem with the courts, they're overwhelmed with cases, so that might take some time. When I visited it on many occasions, I'd like to just tell members this. In fact, we did a site visit with the Deputy Chair, actually, and we were coming out of the entrance and we had to go on the pavement in order to see the visibility. And actually, there was a vehicle parked to the left of the entrance because there's no regulations. And of course, we had to kind of be very careful in which we could come out. So that doesn't work, frankly, unless you put yellow lines either side. There are children which walk past that twice a day. So please come to your own conclusions about that. I think because there's so many problems with this, Madam Chair, and there are so many ifs, buts and maybes, I would like to suggest to this committee that we postpone this application and delay it until the court case has been heard. And frankly, the court case will decide on who owns the land. Once that's decided, it's very simple. Either, it's approved or it's not approved because it can't meet the 73. I've nearly finished.
So you're only supposed to have 3 minutes. But
I do think that we want this completed, but not at any price. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your indulgence.
Right. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair.
3 minutes only, please.
Thank you. I think it's quite clear that there's a lot in relation to this application and the broader site, which frankly is a bit of a mess. I think a large part of that seems to stem from the developer having gone into administration and the complexities of unwinding that situation. We've obviously heard about queries around the sill payment. We've heard about the potentially contaminated mound and the issues with that. We've heard about the potential land dispute. My view at this point, all of that is whilst there is a lot there that does concern me, and I hope more broadly the planning department continue to look into this and enforce where we have options to enforce. These are all adjacent issues rather than within the remit of the Section 73. I think that the only element of the Section 73 that really concerns me as a variation of the existing application is the questions around potential road safety, but I think we've heard quite clearly from the highways officers that they're satisfied, and I will take their advice on that. They're the experts, I'm not, and I need to take what they're saying. So I think on that basis, whilst I very much appreciate the quite impassioned arguments my colleagues are making at this point, I can't see a reasonable basis to refuse this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Penfold, please.
I am inclined to agree with what's been said already. The legal aspect of this has bothered me when I was reading through it. And I think that needs to be cleared up first. The application itself, I'm quite happy with the 73 one. But I think until the legal aspects are cleared up and the problems of finding out exactly what sort of contaminants are in the mound, I think we should defer it. Thank you.
I'm advised that we should have some legal advice at this point due to the complexities of this situation.
Thank you, Chair. From what I've heard in debate, I think it's important that I give some legal advice to the committee. Firstly, you don't have an alternative motion before you. You have to vote on the one that's been put and seconded. Secondly, you have to consider what are material planning reasons for this application. The reasons put forward in respect of the mound is not a planning consideration. It is outside the red line, application red line, and it is a planning enforcement matter. You have no evidence before you regarding contamination or any investigation of the circumstances of that mound. It's not a planning consideration in respect of this application. Secondly, in respect of the boundary dispute, this is a civil matter. It is not a planning consideration for this committee. the expert evidence of the highways officer before the committee is that the works that are required can be delivered by the applicant in their it's in their control, that areas, and that is the only expert evidence before you. And like I said, the boundary dispute is a civil matter and not a planning consideration for which this committee cannot make a decision today, and it needs to be deferred for.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
It's just to carry on from there on the legal aspect of it, because I do have concerns about the 106 alone, that there has been monies that have been acquired, we'll call it. Has that been placed into the legal documentation as such? Because there has been money received.
Again, there is no evidence of that before the committee. I have personally asked the CIL compliance officer as to whether any monies have been paid, and I have been told there's no monies paid at the moment. However, that is not, again, a matter that you need a decision on in order to make a decision on this application. That can be clarified as out of this committee proceedings. It's not something that will a decision needs to be based on. The decision is in respect of the Section 73 application before you, not whether monies that are due have been paid or not.
My conscience would be there.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
No, you can't speak again. I'm sorry. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Listening to this.
Could you switch off your microphone, please, Councillor Hayes?
Can you do that?
Thank you.
Thanks. Listening to what's been said, and things that are within the application, fine, but there are things outside the application which are completely, it's cause and effect. What's within the application goes outside the application. I'm not making myself absolutely clear like Councillor Virgo. Sometimes we do sort of faff around the edges. But what I'm saying is, we've heard about the mound, could be contamination. It's not within what we're looking at. However, the risk is it is affecting outside the application. And we don't know that. It's a material. So it's tricky. That's all I can say right now. It's tricky. I heard what the public speakers spoke about, that they're very worried of the children, and that worries me too. So we've got a mound, we don't know what's in it, it's leaking, could it shed? It's a worry. So it should be within our material considerations, even though it's not within the red line.
Thank you. Could you switch off the... Thank you. Anybody else like to speak at the moment? Councillor Collins?
I too am concerned about the mound. We keep coming back to the mound, but we were assured that one of the conditions of the recommendation required testing of the mound, and could you tell me which condition it is?
It was condition 25 on the agenda.
Condition 25, I'm assuming that if contamination is found, and then the developer will have to address that matter before they can carry on to deliver the drainage. The access at the point where residents leave the Brickfields Lane and go on to Chavey Down Road, the pavement is wide, and I felt that it was relatively safe, so I can't see that as a reason for refusing the application. I'm a little bit concerned that Orchard House hasn't been considered. I only noticed in something I was reading today that it wasn't a dwelling but maybe something different, so I hope that can be looked at. But I can't see, I'm a little unhappy about the application, but I can't really see a planning reason for refusing it, so I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Anybody online? I can't see any hands up. Thank you. So the mound seems a huge one, but it's not as big as the one that fell on the school. It may be contaminated, but we don't know. We haven't got any proof, but it will be tested and there will be action taken on that basis. The difference between the drainage going through to that area and the mound, whether they're considered further or not, is that drainage in particular is a common one that goes across other people's land, and they have agreement for that, so that's not an issue. The mound is not part of the planning site. There are concerns, but it will be tested. But if it is a problem in terms of view out the back, then I imagine that those who want to sell those houses, the new houses, will probably do something about getting rid of the mound. But that's up to them if they want to maximise their profits, I guess. And like Councillor Collins, I can't see any reason why we should refuse this, because we've checked out the highways and the width of the pathways and any number of other issues that were not in the Section 73, but the Section 73 itself has not produced anything other than the conditions that have been raised here, and they do have time to regularise payments because the application's got to be actioned before the end of the year. Otherwise, a decision is made whether that's extended or it's complete, and they can go ahead. So, time for a vote. Those in favour, please.
That's 5 in favour.
And those against, please.
And that's 1 vote against.
And those in abstention, please.
One abstention.
The visiting officers are not allowed to vote. Tina Mackenzie Boyle, did you vote? Oh, I didn't see your hand.
Sorry, so that's 5 in favour, 2 against.
Thank you.
So the motion to approve the recommendation is carried.
Thank you. May I actually take a few minutes break, please, before we go to the next one? Is that okay? Shall we say 5 minutes? Thank you. Number 7, please. The land adjacent to Skimpit Hill Health Centre, High Street. And that's Planning Officer. Report. Oh, it'll take a moment. Oh dear. Ah, that's it.
Thank you, Chair. Margaret McKevitt, presenting officer for this application. This is a full application for the provision of an integrated care hub on land south of the existing Skimpit Hill Health Centre. The facility will offer health and community services to replace and to expand those currently offered in the Skimpit Hill Health Centre, and it will include, amongst others, GP services, maternity care, speech and language services and talking therapies. The current Skimpit Hill Centre building is outdated and this restricts the services that can be provided on the site. Just skip to some elevations. The building will be 3 storeys in height and constructed in brick and metal cladding. A light coloured brick will be used, with brick detailing patterning used to add variety to the main south elevation and the west elevation, which are visible when approaching from Skimpit Hill and the car park. Area of vertical glazing is provided on the eastern elevation to add some interest. The building is approximately 17 metres from Winchester House, which is behind the site, which has commercial units on the ground floor and apartments above. And the building is proposed will be built to BREEAM Excellent standards. The site is adjacent to the Blue Smokehouse, a Grade 2 listed building, and the Grade 2 listed Milestone, and it is considered that the proposal would result in a less than substantial harm to the significance of these buildings. Switch to the layout. The site in the red line includes the existing car park of the current Skimpit Hill Health Centre, and with the removal of some porter cabins within the car park, parking spaces will be increased from 72 to 77. Cycle parking will be provided on site, and the site is close to bus stops, the railway station, the bus station and town centre car parks. And Bracknell is considered in the Bracknell Forest local plan to be the most sustainable location in the borough, and the town centre is well served by public transport and public car parks. Parking for the building would not meet the current adopted car parking standards. However, the site is within Bracknell Town Centre, where car parking standards for town centre users are reduced by up to 55% in the car parking standards SPD, which reflects the opportunities for the use of alternative means of travel. Health facilities are considered in the adopted local plan to be an appropriate town centre use. As the site is in such a sustainable location, it is considered reasonable to apply a reduction on the parking standards in line with reductions for other town centre users. And by reducing the car parking standard for health facilities by 55% in line with all other use classes within the town centre, the parking standard reduces to a requirement of 75 spaces, and 77 spaces are to be provided on this site. The Highway Authority does have concerns that the current car park of the health centre operates close to capacity, but there have been no restrictions on the use of the public using this car park in recent times. In fact, only very recently the barrier to the car park has been reintroduced, and the applicants in the survey submitted with the application considered that commuter parking and other town centre visitors have been using this car park in addition to staff and patients of the centre. As part of this application, there are no opportunities to expand the car park further. As you can see within the red line, there is no further space for that. And there are no opportunities to provide additional car parking specifically to serve this health centre adjacent to the site. But of course, there are car parks in the vicinity. A car park management plan can be secured through a condition attached to any permission, which will ensure that unauthorised parking on the site by shoppers and commuters will be controlled. Enforcement measures proposed to control parking will take the form of staff and patients having to enter their number plate information on arrival in the health centre, and registration will be linked to having an appointment, and it will be checked when visitors arrive at the site. And this should capture any unauthorised car parking not associated with the health centre, and then fines could be issued as appropriate. The car park management plan can also address how priority parking within the car park can be established so that it accommodates disabled and more frail patients that require to park on site. As you can see on the site plan here, the existing health centre is outside the application red line. The applicant has advised that the current building will continue to be used by some administrative staff and some very limited clinical services. However, no controls can be applied through this planning permission to prevent it being used further in the future. The drainage officer has no objection to the proposal, subject to conditions. The site is considered to be exempt from mandatory BNG because it currently is predominantly hard standing, and the biodiversity officer has no objection to the application. Show you some photos here. I know members did visit the site at the weekend. The site is at the front here behind the hoardings and in front of the Winchester House building behind the site. And here's a view of the site behind the hoardings and the adjacent listed building, the Blue Smokehouse, and there's also the milestone which is listed in front of that building. And another view from Skimphill of the site here, adjacent to the listed building with town centre buildings behind. A supplementary report has been prepared which amends the wording of condition 15. The recommendation is set out in the main report and is that the application be approved subject to the conditions in the main report and in the supplementary report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions for the officer? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I understand from section 7.2 that the highways officers in the consultation are not in agreement or not supporting the proposal, which is quite a unique situation. I don't think we've seen one before where highways have raised concerns that haven't been addressed. I'm just wondering if we could ask the highways officer to speak to their outstanding concerns.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Through you, Chair. Yes, I'll try to. I think the officer in the report has covered elements of it, and it is clear in the report. It is not related to the reduction in the parking standards. You heard something in the report there about the reduction in the town centre for parking standards. There had been surveys carried out. I have observed the site. I heard my colleague talk about the previous application, been to the site many times. I too have been to this site multiple times. And I'm satisfied that a level of parking as proposed would be sufficient for the proposed building. And the proposed building, in terms of its number of appointments, is a slight increase on what the current facilities can offer. So I'm relatively comfortable with that. The issue I have is that the existing building that remains there, as set out by the case officer, has some supporting functions, elements of the building is still to be used. It is the fact that that is outside of that, and clearly the occupation of that current building and the patterns of traffic demand that I've witnessed at the site could in this application not be controlled in the same way, which means it could fulfil more duties on that site without control, which could lead to a greater parking demand, basically from the new building and the existing building, and the implications that could have for operations on the site. I recognise this car park management plan's proposed, but it's the practical application that I have some concerns with, and the potential for overspill and operational issues around High Street, Skimphill, if that's a short summary for you.
Supplementary?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a supplementary, probably more for the planning officer then, is in light of those concerns, I appreciate the explanation that the existing building is outside of the red line and therefore can't be conditioned. But it does strike me as slightly odd that we're considering the car parking standard in relation only to the new building, even though the car park clearly serves both buildings. I was just wondering if the officer could explain the rationale for their recommendation in light of that.
Yeah, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. It's correct. The current building, the providers do say that it's not fit for purpose for modern day standards. So it will be retained on site, and there will be some admin staff working in there. And those are part of the number of staff referred to in the report. The 42 members of 8 members of staff include staff that may be retained in the existing building. We can't require its demolition, but in acknowledgement of the fact that a new facility is being provided that will transfer services and expand them, and also in recognition of the fact that this is a town centre site, and I think we have to acknowledge the fact that the availability to travel to the site by other means of transport are there. So we can't restrict use of the current building. It seems unlikely it will be used, and the NHS feel that it's not appropriate to continue to use it. Therefore, the balance is the expansion of services there compared to we can't control the existing building, but it's a town centre site. If people can't park there, there are available car parks, very close proximity and public transport, and it's not an area, I think it's felt, that people will leave their cars on the road outside if they can't park on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina was next, Jessica. Councillor Mackenzie Bourne.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Smith. You and I now are on the same level when it comes to car parking. I can feel it. So thank you very much indeed. Safety, cladding. Do we know what cladding is going to be used outside on that building? And can somebody tell me what Soleil Breeze is? Sounds ever so posh, but what is it?
Thank you, Chair, through you.
Good question.
Details of materials will be submitted under one of the conditions, and obviously building control would also regulate the safe use of cladding. The building is also predominantly brick with some cladding, so the safety aspects will be considered as part of the submission of materials. The Soleil are part of the light cooling. They're the fins on the building that stop the light and sun going into the building, so that the building is BREEAM excellent, and as part of that there's a need to cool the building and prevent overheating, and that's done by the fins that shade the windows. I hope that's a clear explanation.
Supplementary, please. Yep. Thank you very much. I know the fire regs aren't part of building regs, but I assume that the fire service will be coming in to inspect and ensure that the cladding will be safe.
Thank you to you, Chair. The building is not of a height that we've had to seek advice from Health and Safety or Fire Service, so in that sense, no. But building control do control that, and also when the materials are submitted, we will be aware of what that cladding will be. I think a lot of the concerns of the cladding have been on the very tall buildings and buildings where cladding's substantially covering most of the building. That's not the case. And also I think we'd have to rely on the safety procedure knowledge of the NHS on a building that they want to provide for the public.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just ask the officer, in the fact that there's a shortage of car park spacing, could we kind of edge a condition saying that you should try and find accommodation for car parking for the people working there in an alternative site? Is there any such thing we can do there? I'm just thinking there's a multi-storey car park dead opposite. I don't know who owns it, but it's often empty from what I can see. I'm just wondering whether that might solve that problem.
We're talking about the drum, I think, are we?
Thank you to you, Chair. The issue isn't a shortage of parking spaces in the sense of meeting the general requirement in the town centre. It's just Highways officers explained he has a concern if there was a future expansion of uses within Skimphill Centre. There is a condition related to a car park management plan and also to a travel plan, and obviously the management of parking availability by the NHS could also control the availability of parking for their own staff on site as compared to them commuting to the site by other means or using town centre car parks or indeed charging staff, which I'm not proposing, obviously it's an NHS issue. So I would say that there isn't a shortage of parking spaces as such that needs to be resolved at this stage.
A supplementary. Yeah.
Presumably, because we can't have control on the smaller building, the only thing we've got in our armour is change of use, is it? If anything happens and they get rid of it to something else.
Chair, if an application came in for a change of use of that building, then it would be expected to accommodate parking or give an explanation of how that could be served within the town centre.
Thank you. Councillor Egglestone online, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, please. You said that there would only be admin staff in the building that's remaining, but isn't dentistry still remaining there and the sexual health clinic, plus its staff and any users who come to the building? But could you show me sort of on the design where the pickup bays are going to be for bloods and samples and also ambulance space, please?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
My understanding is that admin staff and some limited facilities will be retained in the building, which I believe may include sexual health clinics. I don't have information of any more services that would be retained in the existing building compared to transferred to the new building, but there will be some limited facilities. And the ambulance bay is provided in front of the building on the high street, so there will be an ambulance bay provided there, but it will have bollards in front of it, so it would only be available when an ambulance is called by staff there, and then staff will release the bollards there. Any other servicing and deliveries would take place within the car park to avoid vehicles parking outside the site on High Street.
Thank you. Do you have
Thank you.
supplementary?
Yes. So have they actually got a dedicated bay in there? Because that's sort of essential.
You're talking for the ambulance?
No, for when they come, because they're two separate. One's the Health Triangle and one is Bracknell and District. So both their bloods go to different places. So you have two pickups that come, and normally they have a special place that they can both park, so they can literally just come in and collect, because obviously time is essence getting from one to another. So I was just wondering, where is their dedicated space there, please?
Through you, Chair. My understanding is that there's currently no dedicated space for blood collection, so no, there is no provision for that, although we are expecting details of the layout of the car park to come in, but the arrangements will be as existing.
Right, thank you.
Is that something we could require, I wonder?
Saying, Chair, it is a matter that perhaps could be included within the car park management plan.
Yeah.
That could be provided within the site so that it's.
Oh dear, we're having trouble with these today. Oh dear. Okay. Yes, so that it could be included in a car park management plan, Councillor Eggleston. So that's probably the way forward, I think, with your recommendation on that. Further questions? Councillor Collings.
I was very pleased to see that cycle parking has been proposed. However, I am concerned that the particular stands proposed aren't secure, and cycle theft seems to be a constant problem within the borough, and it can actually deter people from travelling to the town centre because they don't feel as if they have anywhere secure to leave their bikes. Is there anything we can do to request more secure parking than is currently being proposed?
Oh, hang on, we've got an issue with the microphone. It'll take a moment to warm up. What about the one off the camera?
Oh.
Could you pass that one?
Oh, the camera doesn't go to the right place though.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Take this one, I will change up the map quickly.
Dear, oh dear.
Would this one help?
This one works. Yeah. But you have to stand elected. There's one that looks at you, your face will be on the screen.
Ah, we found one.
We have a microphone. We do have a microphone. Through you, Chair. Condition 7 does require details of secure and covered cycle parking spaces to be provided, so that would accommodate and to ensure that the parking spaces for bikes are secured and covered.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah. Good. Further questions? Anyone? Yeah. It's just to check that the car park design and management, I think, is key, I think. And would we be able to contribute to the matters that they consider? Because I've thought that if we're going to restrict the length of stays due to you know, how long the appointment is, then it's got to be able to account for delays in appointments. I mean, sometimes you're sitting there for an hour waiting for your appointment because something else has happened. And then you'd have overlaps and so on. So I think it is very, very difficult. Is that something we can do to contribute to that?
Yes, Chair. Details of the car park management plan would have to be submitted to discharge the condition, and it is something that we could bring back to committee when those details come in, so that the members do have some input in the matters that are a part of that management plan.
Thank you, that's great. Oh, Councillor Egglestone again, please. We can't hear you, Caroline.
Oh, apologies. I just thought I'd double check the notes. And apart from dentistry, audiology is staying there in the building. So there's 3 services remaining in the old building, which is dentistry, sexual health and audiology. And the community dentistry is mainly for SEND. So obviously children who need disabled parking bays, which I sort of are really concerned about. My other question, though, is the talking therapies. At the moment, it takes a whole floor at London House. If that's moving across, there's at least 20 just from there, just with cars, unless they're talking about face-to-face appointments with mental health practitioners. Could that be elaborated on, please?
Chair, I don't have greater details about the specifics of all the services. We know 36 consulting rooms will be provided, and we know the range of services, but I don't, I'm afraid, have the knowledge of the balance of all those users.
Yeah, it's difficult because we don't know how many people will be disabled enough or need the close by parking, I suppose.
And again, disabled parking spaces are provided, and obviously part of the management plan could be the balance of who parking is offered to, which patients when they're offered an appointment, will be advised that parking is available, and which more vulnerable, or for instance, could request parking spaces. So I think that's something that we'd want to discuss as part of that plan with the NHS as provider, who actually have knowledge of who will be on site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think we were a few conversations around the parking and provision of specific things within the parking, including, obviously, we just talked about disabled spaces, and Councillor Eggleston has drawn out the points about the dedicated bays for the drop-offs and connections. I'm just wondering if I think it's planning condition 18 deals with the car park management plan. I'm just wondering if there is reasonably scope for the committee to seek to add to the list of points that the management plan should indicate to cover those items as maybe as an amendment to the recommendation when we get to it.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, the condition reflects some of the measures that the applicants have indicated that could work, but obviously it's not exhaustive, and I'm not sure if we would have the knowledge of all matters that could be taken account compared to the knowledge that the NHS as provider would have. So if we listed things in a condition and amended it, I wondered if we perhaps would miss something, whereas if we keep that in and the management plan when it comes in is brought back to members, then it might then be an opportunity to discuss it with knowledge of what will be going into the building.
That sounds very sensible. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? No? Can I just ask, what do we have to do in order to get the excuse me, parking management plan to be brought back to us?
Through you, Chair, yes, just this request is sufficient.
Lovely, thank you. Sorry, croaking. Okay, discussion, debate, and for that I need to quote the recommendation that this be approved subject to the conditions and amendment to the recommendation condition, page 6 of supplementary papers. That's page 157 in our reports and page 6 in supplementary. With the addition of the question of the discussion about the parking management. So I propose that, seconded by Councillor Collins.
I'll second.
Those to speak, please. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I will support this. The parking has got to be sorted out, without a doubt. I don't think we can go into detail about, audiology and whatever. That will be up to those that go into the building. However, let's ensure that we've got to think of the SEND as well, the SEND children, that there is a special place for them in that management plan. Let's hope that that's detailed, that the children are safe because of being under that, under the SEND. So we need to ensure that they are taken care of. But other than that, I think it's about time, Chair, that we've got something like this in town centre. So I'm really pleased that we've got something going.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Likewise, I think I'm supportive of this application. I think it's obviously a positive addition, bringing new services which are much wanted by our residents, and obviously to a good, convenient location. The car parking is an interesting one, and I have had correspondence from residents on this in the build-up to this committee. I think the conclusion I'm drawing from the arguments placed by the officers is essentially that the car parking works on the basis of how the applicant has currently claimed they're going to use the buildings, but because the existing building's outside of the red line, we are very much having to take that on trust rather than kind of knowing that, which is an interesting situation. I think there's obviously a risk associated with that, but I think at this point it feels like a small and palatable risk. Therefore, at this point, I'm willing to accept the planning balance argument made by the officers, so I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Collins?
I can only agree with what others have said. The new building is much needed and has been long awaited. I'm disappointed that the existing building is being retained. It's awful. But I'm pleased that BREEAM target of excellent has been proposed. I think that's a really positive thing for the town centre as well. So I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Have you already spoken? No, I'm sorry. Sorry, not a chance. Okay, and does any of... Yes, Councillor Virgo.
I would just like to say that, you know, we desperately need these facilities. We desperately need them. It's a pity about the car parking, but I think we have this problem everywhere, don't we? And I'm sure it will be sorted out. There is space around, I guess. It just means being sensible. But, yeah, we've got to go for this, haven't we?
Waste. Where is the waste?
The waste? The waste? I don't know. I'm being given cues on my right, actually. I think everyone heard it. Where does the waste go, Madam Chair?
No, I'm not answering any questions that nobody else has asked. Thank you. Councillors, would you like to say anything? No?
No, I would just say that I'm totally in support of this.
Lovely.
We do need even more facilities, really.
Thank you.
I cannot but agree with what everybody has said so far. It's a shame about the parking, but hopefully they can manage it well.
Thank you. Yep, and me as last person, I absolutely know that we need these facilities and it's the most sustainable place to put them. I'm very worried about the parking, to be honest, but I'm pleased that we can discuss this management of the car parking and make sure that a sensible process is gone through to maximise the use of and get people to walk more, perhaps. So, yeah, I'm in favour too. So, shall we take a vote? Those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Oh, shall we adjourn for a few minutes just to fix? Have we got enough? Yep.
We're back online.
Lovely. Officer, this is agenda item 8, 14 Woolhampton Way. Would you like to present us?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name is Kevin Lloyd-Jones. I'm the planning officer for this case. The application is for a 2-storey side extension with an integral garage, a part 2-storey, part single-storey rear extension, a front porch, and it involves the partial demolition of a shared detached garage. So, looking at the application site here, the existing and the proposed site plans, currently it comprises a semi-detached 2-storey 3-bedroom dwelling, and it's just to the east of Woolhampton Way. Attached to the south is number 16. The site includes a single garage, and this is attached to the garage of the neighbour to the north, which is at number 12 Farringdon Drive. To the rear in the garden there is a protected oak tree. The application's been referred to the planning committee following concerns over remedial work to the remaining half of the garage, loss of light and overlooking. Now, the overall plot measures approximately 495 square metres. The proposed dwelling will have a footprint of approximately 130 square metres, which is just over a quarter of the plot, so preserving much of the amenity space and being appropriate to the plot size. A 1 metre gap is maintained between the extended side elevation and the northern south boundary. This enables side access and avoids any terracing impact. So the final set of plans submitted show the extension accommodating an enlarged kitchen diner, an integral garage to the ground floor, and a master bedroom and ensuite at first floor level. They're bringing the property to a 4-bedroom. The 2-storey side extension is to the northern elevation. It will be set back from the existing front elevation and down from the existing ridge line. The eaves and the roof form, as you can see in the plans here, will match that of the existing dwelling. And all material use will match that of the existing dwelling. So just a few site visits I know the members visited on Saturday. The garage to be partly demolished, you can see that clearly. It's the white door, the neighbouring garage being the blue-grey door. And then you can see the rear view in the bottom photo, the bottom and top right photo there. Now what I'll do is address the points in turn that have been of concern for this application, namely those being the impact on neighbour amenity, the treatment of the partial demolition of that shared garage, the parking and the driveway surfacing, and the impact on the protected oak tree. So looking at the neighbour amenity first, the side elevation of the extension will be 16.5 metres from the rear elevation of number 12 Farringdon. This is shown on the plan on the side there, and also you can see number 12 Farringdon's on the right-hand side in that top right photo, so you can see how set back it is. Now this would pass the BRE test for impact on sunlight and daylight, and is not considered to be unduly overbearing at this distance. You can see in the bottom right that a bathroom window is proposed in that side elevation facing the rear of number 12. This will be conditioned to be obscure glazed and only openable above 1.7 metres, so as not to result in any overlooking. At the rear elevation of the first floor extension, that's 23 metres from the rear boundary of the site, and that distance exceeds the minimum guidance in the design SPD. The garage treatment. The existing party wall within the garage is a concrete block wall. That would be maintained and then finished in a brick slip to match the existing dwelling. The applicant will also install rainwater goods and downpipes to allow for the water to drain away into a permeable surface. And I also commit to making good any elements on the party wall which will be subject to an undertaking under the Party Wall Act, which is outside of the planning system. We can only control how the garage will look. Adherence to the submitted plans and commitment to make good the garage will be conditioned as part of the permission. A party wall agreement will need to be signed with the neighbour. As I say, that's a legal matter, not a planning matter. Moving on to the highway and parking. 3 off-street parking spaces are provided to the front of the dwelling, as shown in the proposed plans here. That's in line with the council's parking standards, SPD, for a 4-bedroom dwelling. There is a slight slope to the driveway, and the applicant has agreed to an additional condition, which I will communicate with the clerk, and that's for the driveway to be porous, and that will be included with the planning permission. So there will be no runoff of rainwater onto the road in front. And that's an additional condition that we will add. Moving on to the tree at the back. The oak in the rear garden is protected. It's a TPO. It's shown to the left in the photograph and to the bottom left on the plan, the English oak. You can see there. The proposed extensions will be well away from the root protection area. The applicant has submitted a tree protection plan, a scheme for arboricultural monitoring during the course of construction, and an on-site drainage plan. These have been accepted by the Council's Tree Service, who have no objections to the proposed extensions, subject to the conditions that are set out in Section 11 of the committee report. These being the tree protection measures, Condition 5, the arboricultural monitoring, Condition 6, and Condition 7 helps safeguard the tree from any indirect subsidence, a pre-convention condition for foundation design. So I've covered off the main areas there that were of concern. So to conclude, it's considered to be in accordance with the relevant policies of the Bracknell Forest Local Plan, the Parking Standard SPD, the Design SPD, and the MPPF. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in Section 11 of the report and the additional condition for driveway porosity. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall we take questions for the officer, please? Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, officer. That was an exceedingly good report, I have to say. Something apparently exceeds by how much of the design SPD? What was that?
In the design SPD, there's a minimum distance for a 2-storey rear extension to the rear boundary, which I think is 21 metres? 22 metres. This one is 23 metres. As in, so it can't be less than 22 metres.
It can't be less than, okay.
Yeah, so that's to, so there's no impact on neighbours to the rear for having a 2-storey rear extension.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
Are there any restrictions on the garage being later turned to living accommodation?
Through you, Chair. No, there are no restrictions. The garage actually doesn't meet the minimum parking standard, so it's not considered as a parking space. So it would be cycle storage, used for storage. So the 3 parking spaces are the right size on the driveway.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor
James, actually, can I just ask quickly? We went on the recce and there's a fence in the middle of the garden, which isn't on the picture there. Is that, you don't need planning permission for that, do you?
No, it's less than a metre.
Yeah.
The applicant says that while work's going on, he's been in the back and it's to protect the trees.
Fine, thank you very much.
More questions? Any online? No? I think we're done with questions. Thank you very much. I think you can. Thank you very much. Good. So the recommendation is on page 173. We don't have any supplementary. To approve, subject to the conditions that are stated.
Including the additional condition.
Oh, included, yes, including the additional condition for a porous driveway. Yeah, yes, that's what you proposed, wasn't it? So, anybody like to speak, please? All sensible?
Has it been moved and seconded?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I got interrupted in the middle of moving them. Yeah. And so we have to, yes, I move that this be approved according to the conditions that we spoke about, and Councillor Virgo will second. Thank you. There's always something. Anybody to speak? No, nobody's changed their minds. Okay. So shall we go straight to the vote? Those in favour? That appears to be everybody. Oh dear. Use the
That's been approved unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. That's really good. On to the next application. Is it the last one now? It's a very eventful meeting. Dear. And this is now the Duke's Ride, 12 to 14 Duke's Ride in Crowthorne. The officer report. The officer is Sarah Horwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning and permission for the front part of the ground floor of the building to be used for a Class E use, the retention of a one-bedroom ground floor flat to the rear of the building, and external alterations including a new shop front. A lawful two-bedroom flat at first floor level would be retained. Parking and cycle storage is proposed to the rear of the building. Members are directed to the supplementary report for updates in relation to the report, and there also has been an additional letter of representation which has been received since the printing of the report, which states that there are no issues with parking and turning to the rear of the building and that the proposal will attract trade to the borough. So in relation to the application, we'll just have a quick look at the plans. Just zoom in quickly. So this is the new shop front to the front of the building facing onto Duke's Ride. Let's go up to the floor plans. You can see this element here to the front of the building facing onto Duke's Ride will be used for the Class E use. The rear part of the building will become a one-bedroom flat. Zoom out a little bit more, sorry. And then there's an existing first floor flat above the existing commercial unit, which would be retained. So the proposed use of part of the ground floor of a vacant unit previously occupied by a pharmacy back to a Class E use within designated district centre is acceptable in principle. The provision of a new flat within the settlement boundary is also acceptable in principle. Such uses are, however, only acceptable subject to material planning considerations, including whether there would be any adverse impacts to residential amenity, the character of the area, or highway safety implications. The development would not adversely impact upon the residential amenity of neighbouring occupiers or users of adjoining buildings, and the external alterations proposed are considered acceptable. The development would, however, result in unacceptable impacts on highway safety. A material consideration which the LPA considers should be afforded significant weight in the determination of this application is an outline application for 2 flats on land to the rear of the existing building. The application was refused on highway safety grounds and an appeal was lodged against the refusal. The inspector, in dismissing the appeal, concluded that the proposal would lead to an increased risk of conflict between road users, which would significantly harm highway safety. No swept path analysis has been provided with this application to demonstrate that there is sufficient space for vehicles to park and turn safely on the site and to leave the site in a forward gear for both the residential uses and the Class E use proposed. In the absence of sufficient information in relation to on-site parking and turn-in, this could result in oversold parking in the surrounding area where local car parks are known to be well used. No information on parking capacity within the surrounding area has been provided. Given that there are concerns about insufficient turning space within the site, vehicles could be forced to reverse along the access, increasing the risk of conflict both within the site and with other users, and also pedestrians on Duke's Ride. It is also unclear how larger vehicles such as delivery vans could safely access the site due to insufficient turning space, which could lead to a delivery van, for example, having to reverse out of the site or park on Duke's Ride close to a pedestrian crossing. And at that stage, maybe it's worthwhile just having a quick look at some of the site photos. Zoom out a bit. So this is the unit subject to the application here. You can see the pedestrian crossing here, the zigzag markings in front of the units. This is the existing access into the driveway, access to the site here. We just go down, you'll see another view. So this is the existing vehicular access into the site along the building here. The next photo, this is taken at the entrance to the site from Duke's Ride, looking down the access towards the back of the site here. Zoom out slightly. This is within the site. This is looking at the rear of the building. You can see the access to the side here, the adjoining church next door here. That's again just another view of the access, looking back towards Duke's Ride. And then this is within the site. You can see the area of block paving, which is currently in situ, and there's also an area of land behind, which is also proposed for parking, which is currently laid to grass at the moment. And that's just another view of the parking to the rear of the site as it currently exists. So if I just scroll back. So the proposed uses would result in an intensification of use of this substandard access with restricted width and restricted sight lines. The access, as you can see in the photo, is not wide enough to enable two vehicles to pass alongside each other. The access would be shared by 3 separate users and would provide the only way into the site for all users, including pedestrians. The width of the access does not allow for a separate pedestrian footpath within the site, along with sufficient space for a vehicle to safely pass. This would increase the risk of conflict between users of the access. No information is provided with the application to demonstrate that adequate visibility can be achieved. Sightlines at the access are obscured by the building itself and an off-site tree, and emerging vehicles would therefore not have a clear view of pedestrians when exiting the site. The highway issues identified above are issues which the inspector identified as highway safety concerns when considering and dismissing the appeal for the outline application for 2 flats on the land to the rear of the building. To conclude, the LPA acknowledges that the proposal would not adversely impact upon adjoining buildings or residential occupiers. The external alterations as proposed are acceptable, and the proposal would bring a vacant ground floor commercial unit back into use. However, for the reasons set out in the committee report, the proposal would result in unacceptable highway safety impacts, including insufficient parking and turning space, and an intensification of use of a substandard access onto Duke's Ride. As such, the application is recommended for a refusal as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Questions for the officer, please. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Sarah. Explain. How will it affect highway safety?
Through you, Chair. Apologies, Sarah and I are now sharing a microphone. The highway safety implications are multiple on this site and tested through a previous appeal, and the inspector went to some length to look at the site itself and its impacts on highway safety. So considering the access itself in the first instance, the access is significantly below the council standards for a single-way working access, let alone a two-way working access. So vehicles cannot pass through that access point. The visibility when leaving that access onto Duke's Ride, thank you, Sarah, there's a perfect photo there, is obstructed by the building itself to the right. So you cannot see pedestrians as you come out, and it is over land which is not in the applicant's control on the other side, which is forms part of the church, including the wall and the tree that is there. The issues of the width and the visibility are compounded by the rear area, which is insufficiently wide to accommodate the number of parking spaces required for this use and the 6 metre turning depth beyond, which is set out in Manual for Streets. So for a standard 4.8 metre long by 2.5 metre wide parking space, Manual for Streets sets out that you need 6 metres beyond the space for turning. In this instance, there is 8.35 from memory metres across that width, therefore considerably short of the 10.8 metres needed for a 4.8 metre long space and 6 metres turning. The lack of turning space therefore results in a higher likelihood of vehicles reversing out of that access onto Duke's Ride with even less visibility. The access itself to the rear is also required to serve both pedestrians and vehicles, so therefore creating a point of conflict, which is in the Inspector's Appeal decision 3274877 on the previous permission. The inspector notes the access would provide the only way into the properties for all users, including pedestrians and cyclists. A dedicated footpath is not shown and the width does not lend itself to provision of this and sufficient space for vehicles. This would increase the risk of conflict between users of the access. As Sarah pointed out, the inspector's decision on the previous permission and the refusal of previous permission for residential use in this area is a material consideration on this application. We are considering the same access as the inspector considered, the same area for parking and turning as the inspector considered for a residential use that the inspector considered to have an unacceptable impact on highway safety.
Thank you. Supplementary? It's got to be a question. You can comment
Unfortunately,
later.
what you're considering here, what we're seeing now today, is not what the inspector saw. I'll explain.
I'm struggling to find a question in your supplementary question.
I'll just go, and thank you. So that's fine.
Councillor Virgo.
Thank you.
Could I just ask the officer if he has seen a video of a van, a transit van, turning around? I mean, I declare to you, I have seen it because it's been sent to me. And although it's tight, well, that's the question, actually. Have you seen it, I suppose?
There's two answers to this question. The first answer is yes, I have seen the video. The second is a video is not a material planning consideration. Planning decision is based on a set of approvable plans, which we do not have in front of us. No swept paths, no acceptable parking plan, and no visibility display plans have been provided to us for consideration. The video shows a van turning, but with fewer than the required number of other vehicles within the car park at the time. And if you were to incorporate all of the number of vehicle parking spaces required to serve this site, that turning movement would not be possible.
Councillor Collins.
Sorry, can I just step in as well, Chair? Just to clarify as well, the parking and turning is only one highway issue here that we're considering. There are also other issues in relation to the intensification of use of the substandard access and the visibility displays. So the parking and turning is just one element. I just wanted to step in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
I would like to return to the parking. I understand we've got 2 flats on site. One is a 1-bed, one is a 2-bed. There is also a commercial unit proposed. How many parking spaces? Can you confirm to me how many parking spaces are required for that?
For the residential use, our parking standards are 1 space for a 1-bed dwelling and 2 spaces for a 2-bed dwelling. For the commercial use, I do not have the floor space in front of me to be able to give you an answer. It would have been helpful to have that in advance of the meeting.
Okay, I've got a supplementary to that. The first floor flat, which is 2 bedrooms, does not appear to have any planning permission, and it's clearly been there for a long time. Can we impose our parking SPD on properties retrospectively?
Through you, Chair, I think the question is more that this area to the rear that is now proposed to serve more than just the first floor flat has previously solely served that unit and the commercial. Therefore, we are intensifying the use of this parking area and the use of the access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. The officers mentioned that we've not received a sweat path analysis and also we've not received visibility displays. I'm just wondering if the officer can confirm, have we given the applicant due opportunity to provide those?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, the applicant was provided with the highway comments at the time, and I would hope they would also be aware of the appeal decision, which was a very detailed appeal decision in dismissing the previous appeal for the outline application on highway safety grounds, where the inspector was very clear about insufficient information being submitted at that time in relation to things like sweat path and visibility. But yes, the applicant was aware of the highway comments, and they have had the opportunity, if they wanted to submit additional information, that information could have come into us, but to date it hasn't. Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? Councillor Virgo?
Chair, I'm a little confused about all this, to be honest with you. We went on a site visit and we were told by the officer that the space at the end would not be in the application. But I've seen, as I understand it, because I've been sent this, that half of that is for parking, additional parking. And I don't quite understand. There seems to be a variance in what we're looking at and what I'm certainly being sent, which seemed personally reasonable when I saw it personally.
I think that that's kind of immaterial because we haven't got any sweat path analysis or anything like that.
But I still don't get it. I don't understand. I don't know if anyone wants to explain this, because I've got the emails, which everybody must have those emails because they've been circulated.
Would you like to comment?
Through you, I'll repeat the answer I gave previously, is that the planning process has to be based on a set of approvable plans, and we have not been sent a set of approvable plans that mitigate the highway safety impacts that the inspector, in dismissing the previous appeal for residential on this site, set out in some detail as an unacceptable impact on highway safety. We do not have those plans in front of us to be able to conclude that this is acceptable.
Any other questions? Councillor Collins.
When I looked at the planning application, the plans that I saw have a detailed plan of the car park with the 3 spaces at the back and the 2 at the side. Would it help to show those? They don't seem to be on this plan that's being displayed. Am I looking at an old version of the plans, or do you have it, and could you explain that the 2? It seems to show 2 paths for the 2 cars on the side. Oh, that's not it either.
That is the latest plan that has been submitted as the site plan. There are multiple alternative plans in existence which do not show the same things. The plans that have been submitted are inconsistent.
So where did you get that one?
Off the planning register.
Oh, it's an old one, isn't it? I don't know. Any more questions for understanding purposes? No? Oh, Councillor Penfold.
Is this plan including the green, like the grassland at the end?
Through you, Chair. So the plan that you can see on the screen in front of you is the site plan that has been submitted, which you can see includes that grassed area at the end with 3 parking spaces shown, albeit they are substandard length with substandard turning beyond. The separate garden and cycle store plan shows a completely different arrangement, which does not include that grassed area beyond. So, as per my previous answer, the 2 separate plans which have been submitted for the same application are inconsistent in whether that grassed area at the back is or is not proposed for use for parking.
Thank you. very confusing. Do you have a supplementary? No? Okay. Any other questions? Any online? No? No. Then let us go to debate. And for the purposes of this, the recommendation is on page 195, that the application be refused for the reasons stated, and it's amended on page 6 of the supplementary papers. Seconded by Councillor Collins.
I second.
Yes. That's still on. So, anyone want to speak now, please? Councillor Boyle.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to support the officer's recommendations. They seem to be harking back to historical applications. In fact, there have been a number of applications on this site, and it seems all have been included into one confusion. The recommendations seem to pertain to the historical applications, which at one point was an application for an additional building containing an additional two-bedroom flats. The highway's objections to this was valid, as there would have been little space for that parking or manoeuvring. However, this isn't the application before us. So let's consider what is before us, shall we? The application does not increase the size of the existing building. It adds a one-bedroom flat, reduces the size of the commercial unit. The applicant plans on creating a gravelled parking area in addition to the existing paved area, which gives 117 square metres of turning and temporary parking space, and an additional 66 square metres of parking. The reason for refusing currently is outlined by the officer on the site visit, that it was not, you couldn't demonstrate that there was adequate space to manoeuvre within the site to enable a forward motion in first gear. My colleagues have seen this, the officer has seen a video of a van turning round. Could he do that on his back garden? Let's just move on. And to the access to the site is too narrow, apparently, for two vehicles to pass. Why would they? The applicant and visitors to the site have, for the first 9 months, have had no issues turning on the brick paved area and parking at the brick paved area at all. Not once has he had to leave the site in a reverse gear and only a forward gear. There have been occasions of 4 vehicles parked to the rear, with all able to exit in a forward gear. Colleagues, you have all seen the videos of the area showing large vehicles being able to turn with ease and vehicles be able to turn out using first gear. The entrance to the site has a dropped curb, already giving access to it, providing similar width and access to many properties on Duke's Ride and the High Street, where it's only possible for a single vehicle to traverse at one time. There is a planning application reference 5341 from 1959 for a garage on the site, and that was accessed using that same side driveway. That would mean the access actually has been allowed for more than 60 years. It therefore cannot be substandard, as it's fit for purpose, which is to access the backyard. Having contacted the fire station watch manager for Crowthorne about safety issues, he said there was none for fire. They would run the hoses from the appliance. Of the 3 emergency service, in the event of an emergency, police cars and paramedics would have clear access to the rear. Ambulances in the UK have to be less than 96 inches or 2.4 metres, the same width as a transit van, and the drive width is 2.8 metres, giving enough room for an ambulance should ever be needed. Apparently, the proposed access would be shared by multiple households and potentially retail use on the ground floor. The access would provide the only way into the properties for all users, including pedestrians and cyclists. Can we just be clear? This is not an HMO. This is an office and a business with 2 flats with parking, adhering to our parking spaces. 2 spaces for the 2-bed, 1 space for 1-bed, and there will be planning applications for 6 further extra spaces on the green space, which would give potentially 9 spaces in total. Should there be a need for 2 office spaces, they will be available. I can't see there will be an influx of pedestrians or cyclists into what is ostensibly a private area, and it's highly unlikely there will be any need for 2 vehicles to pass each other at any one time. The proposed conversion, well, it's already been done, isn't it, on 10.5? Crowthorne is renowned for its businesses in the High Street and Duke's Ride. It's only a high street. It's the only high street in the borough of Bracknell Forest, and much supported by the Cabinet Member for Regen and Small Businesses, Councillor Paul Bidwell. We can't lose a well-respected business because of a tilted view of highway safety, which actually boils down to people managing their own space. We are often talking about a tilted balance, and this is an obvious tilt towards pragmatism and beneficence to ensure that the application is approved. Bracknell Forest often, when determining applications based on parking,
to a close, please?
in my experience over the last few months, they've been on the whim of developers who have blatantly ignored our policies. I cannot support this act.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I will take a slightly different view on this than my colleague. My feeling is highway safety is an area in which we shouldn't be compromising. There are quite clear requirements and expectations on applicants to demonstrate how their proposals are safe, and the officers have been quite clear as to what we're missing there in this application. There are key elements of evidence to demonstrate that the proposals would be safe in terms of their highways proposals that simply haven't been provided, and as has been confirmed by the officers, the applicant has been given due opportunity to provide that. Without that evidence, I just don't see any good reason why, if it is safe and up to standard, that the applicant wouldn't be able to provide that. So I therefore don't see any obvious reason why we should be agreeing to make a compromise with regards to highway safety in respect to this application. I do take Councillor Mackenzie Boyle's point on the benefits of bringing the retail unit back into use, and that would obviously be very encouraged. But I don't think we should be compromising on safety to do that, and I don't think this application is the only way to achieve that goal. So on that basis, I'm supporting the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
I would take the opposite view of my fellow councillor. I went to the site meeting with my colleagues on Saturday, and to be honest, there is a confusion. I can see that. I don't quite understand why there's a confusion, but there is one. We have to be mindful that Crowthorne is not, well, the centre of Crowthorne is quite a small area of intense shops and business. That's a fact. It's not ideal, but that's what is there. Our borough wants commercial shops and businesses to thrive. That's what we stand for in this borough. It's not ideal. I think I would say that. I could see that on Saturday. It's not ideal. It's not, what one would want. However, I saw a transit van and I saw the video, and it was able to turn. It's tough, but it can. It is possible to get those cars in. It's not easy, but I've seen other applications in this council where we've had, parallel parking, which I completely disagreed with, but we passed it. So I disagree. Vehicles won't be backing out. No one would back out there because it's horrendous. You wouldn't do that. So you've got to be able to turn around. And I saw a van turn around and it would go forward. Yes, there are pedestrians there, Chair, but it's a high street, for goodness sake, And I would want to see the commercial things thrive in this borough and not be refused. So in my view, I don't think it's ideal, but I would approve it.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? Councillor Collins.
I'm still a little bit confused by this application. It seems we want 5 vehicles parked to meet parking standards, and yet the plan I was looking at isn't the plan that's been shown tonight. I think we need some clarification before we can actually approve an application on this site. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle mentioned 9 vehicles parking, but the issue to me is if you've got those vehicles parked and you have a delivery van drive in, it is very unlikely with other vehicles parked that that delivery van is able to turn round. We haven't mentioned the fact that the access exits onto the zigzags of a zebra crossing. Nobody's mentioned that yet, and that to me heightens the safety issue associated with this application, and I don't think I can support it. I would perhaps like to see it deferred so that the applicant can provide the information that the officers are looking for, but I don't know whether that is an option.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? No? Shall I conclude then? There are some things we don't know. I know there are a number of these driveways to the back of buildings in Crowthorne, and we've seen a photo of another one that exits onto the zigzags of a zebra crossing. So I don't think that's the only one. It does concern me that we don't know the depth of the building and therefore the length of the driveway, and whether that's a problem when you've got to be aware that somebody's coming in and you know, wait. I don't know whether they've got to set up any traffic lights or anything like that. But you know, there's much we don't know. There's much we haven't got because we don't have the diagrams of the intended parking scheme. But I think that the best way forward is to refuse this application and make sure that the applicants actually discuss the whole situation with the case officer and the highways people. And you know, there are so many others like this in Crowthorne. I can't see why there isn't a way forward with this, but it does have to be carefully managed with the parking. So I will refuse now, but hope they will get a more detailed proposal. I don't think there's enough time. I don't know whether they'll defer. I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it? They can.
And the officers haven't seen it, but you know, we should give the applicant some space to explain that, because I've seen different plans, and you know, everyone has in this room, I think.
Through you, Chair, if I may. I think there's a requirement to make a decision on the motions before you. My understanding, having spoken to the case officer, is that ample opportunity has been given to the applicant to submit the information, and there's been an unwillingness to do that.
Okay. Well, I think we do have to decide tonight, but we'll get the further information hopefully soon. And it really behoves the applicant to converse in detail about what's happening with the parking and the swept path and so on. I believe it's possible to do, but they need to be putting convincing evidence to us. So that'll be my decision. So can we take a vote, please? All those in favour of the recommendation to remove, unfortunately, to refuse tonight? Oh dear.
I believe that is 3 in favour of refusing the application.
And those against?
And that is 2 against
And abstentions.
and 2 abstentions. So the recommendation is carried for refusal.
Thank you. That being the final application for this evening, thank you very much for your time and your patience. And that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.